All right, a special edition of Soonercast with Jay Down and Goss. We got the great Matt Blackwell on here, who I followed him for a long time, and I didn't realize, we were telling our buddies the other day, me and Goss, that you were coming on. They're like, I don't guess I know him. I'm like, really? Because you send text messages of tweets that he sends out. And they're like, oh, that's him. So I thought that was great. Now our buddy is God love him. He's a sweetheart, but he I don't think he realized. He goes, oh, that's him. I'm like, yeah, that's him. So, but I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and let us know what you do.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it. My name is Matt Blackwell. I'm a recruiting analyst, I guess is the word for it. But I do my best to cover recruiting and team information for Oklahoma Sooners, specifically, primarily on the football side. There's been a lot of trying to cross over into different sports. Football is definitely the main focus, but crimsoncaptain.com is where you can find all of the articles and things that I write. You can find me on Twitter or X at cap_405. And I've been at this for about a year and a half now. It feels like it's been longer, but it's been about that long, I think, since
there's been a lot going on in this year and a half. So that's
it's been a jam-packed period of time for sure. So good start, but really enjoy it. It's definitely a time-consuming hobby of mine at this point is where it's at for me. But I have a good time doing it. I have a really good community of people that like to get on Discord and talk all things OU and go back and forth about the game and share the emotional roller coaster that is OU these days. So it's a lot of fun.
We were just happy to see a high point on Saturday. Since speaking of roller coasters, there's been lots of lows, so it was exciting to have an actual high point, or maybe the down part of the roller coaster is more fun. Maybe we've just been the click up the Texas Giant. That's what we've been doing for this whole season. It seems like.
Yeah. This Alabama game kind of felt similar in some ways to the Sugar Bowl game, the Trevor Knight game, where you go into that game and you don't expect OU to really have much of a shot based on previous performances and within that year, and then it just all came together. And so, I mean, I had people, buddies of mine who we don't talk a whole lot, or I maybe not have heard from, for a while. All of a sudden, my text messages are blowing up. What is going on? What is happening? This is not the way it was supposed to go. Like, we're happy about it, and they're not passing the ball. They're only running the ball. Like that shouldn't be okay. But we're okay with it now because it's working. So
I thought somebody referred to it as the shotgun wishbone. So if that's what it was, then we'll take that. Well, Matt, you made a lot of noise on Twitter this last weekend. I think Jeremy even mentioned that's the first thing we saw when we woke up. I guess was that Saturday morning or whatever day that was. Tell us a little bit more about, as excited as we are about Saturday, tell us a little more about the OC position and kind of what and just the floor is yours.
So obviously the offensive coordinator search has been something that they've had in process since Seth Littrell was fired. And it's been a very thorough process on OU's part, from what I understand, and it came to a head late last week. And this is going off of the sources that I've been able to talk to, and what they've shared with me is that there came a point early last week where, as far as everybody had been making me aware and everything that we had been discussing amongst the people that I talked to, Dan Mullen was still the focus for OU, and he was essentially a very popular choice among the donor base and among some in the admin at OU, from what I understood. And so there was a desire to make a push for him. And I thought at one point, just based on talking to people, I thought at one point that they had either a deal in place or very close to being in place with Dan Mullen. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure how close that got to being a real thing. I think the story will come out eventually, and we'll know behind the scenes. And for some reason, it fell apart. I couldn't tell you exactly why. And again, not knowing exactly how close they came here. Now that we're at the end of this situation, it's going to be interesting to hear just how that unfolded. But things transpired pretty quickly there as we got into late last week, to a point where my sources are very confident, and I'm very confident based on those conversations, that they've got a deal in place with Ben Arbuckle, the current Washington State offensive coordinator, and that's what led me to put out the post that I did, laying that out. And there'll be more details that come out after the formal announcement, but that's where we're at, just based on the information that my sources had shared with me, and a high degree of confidence that those people had shared, and that I have based on those conversations. So it was a very thorough search. I mean, a lot of the names that you hear being thrown about now is supposedly still under consideration are names that they definitely had on their list at some point, of people that either had a conversation with somebody at OU, whether it's Venables or the search firm, or went through the formal interview process. It's a little bit hard to know exactly who went through different parts of that process, and who was on tier 1 versus a tier 2 type list, because that's not exactly something that those candidates want shared, especially in the moment. But I know that Ben Arbuckle was very much at the top of that list almost throughout this process, just because of his roots in Texas. And I think there's also an affinity for that air raid style system that he brings to the table. So when you look at the candidates that OU had in their pool, the realistic ones, there were some really interesting names thrown about during this process. The more established head coaches, Dan Mullen was one of those, but you also had guys like Billy Napier and Andy Kolnicki from Penn State, who at one point were linked and listed as possibilities. But when you look at as things got narrowed down, the list that OU had to pull from, I think Ben Arbuckle is one that has to be exciting for OU fans in a lot of ways, just because he's got a history of innovation within that air raid system, and an ability to tailor his scheme and what he does on a year-to-year basis based on who he has available. And he's got a history of working with some really good quarterbacks that have that are in the NFL and have had really good college careers. So I think there's a lot of reason to hope, if you're just looking at his history of work and his scheme and how he coaches. And then he's a young guy. I mean, he's not like a Zach Alley, I think, in that sense, as far as obviously being young, but also having a lot of experience within that span of time, even as a young coach. So it'll be exciting to see what he brings to the table. I think we'll see a formal announcement no later than December 2nd, if everything goes according to plan. And again, if it goes according to what my sources have indicated, we should see. But definitely a lot of excitement, I think, for what can be and what we'll see out of Ben Arbuckle.
What have you heard about Mateer? Is he on board with coming with? Because a lot of people said, like, they're trying to link these quarterbacks in with these OCs. Mateer's name is always mentioned after Jackson's game against Alabama, that everybody's like, change your attitude about him. Let's keep in mind he did not throw the football. But that said, he did what was supposed to do in the game plan. But just curious, like, what you've heard, like, on the quarterback front.
So at this point, again, just based on conversations that I've had and what I've heard, I would not be surprised if John Mateer ends up joining Ben Arbuckle in Norman. And Mateer is a guy that's going to be in high demand from a number of different schools. So there's definitely competition on the OU side, but whenever you talk to people involved in the process, there's definitely a willingness on OU's part to play ball in that world and to be competitive from an NIL perspective for what it's going to take to bring in a guy like like material who is in high demand with some schools that are willing to write a pretty big check. So, but again, just based on what I know and conversations that I've had, would not be surprised at all if Mateer ends up in Norman.
Yeah, well, I think certainly one thing that a lot of people will say with this Arbuckle hire is, man, I don't want air raid. I love what happened on yesterday. We ran it down their throat, blah, 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 that sort of thing. But, if you look at Washington State's box scores, there's a lot of games Mateer is their leading rusher. So I don't think it's one of those things of this isn't pure just Mike Leach, old school, Patrick Mahomes air raid, that sort of thing. I think this is kind of some of the nuanced things that are coming with Arbuckle. So I do think some of the bedwetting that goes with that hopefully will go down a little bit. Speaking of bedwetting, I kind of talk a lot to get to this. When you see people on Twitter, some of the Sooner Scoop staff took some shots at you, that sort of thing. I mean, is that a badge of honor that, hey, I'm out there and I'm saying that? Is that something, Michael Jordan style, and I took that personally? What thoughts do you kind of have? Do you have on that, Matt?
I think in a different life, I would have reacted very, very poorly to it. Just quite honestly, obviously it's not fun, but it's also something that I have come to embrace, just because you're not going to win everybody over. You're not going to ever be in a situation where everybody likes you or approves of you. I'm sure they've got their reasons. It doesn't really do me any good, I think, to try and respond to that or try and rationalize it or make sense of it. The best I can do is just continue to do my work and make sure that I'm serving my subscribers and the people that pay me for information the best I can. And the other element to that is making sure that I'm protecting my sources and that I'm honoring them by the work that I'm doing and the information that I'm putting out there and protecting them. As long as I'm doing those two things, and obviously working to make sure that my work is getting better, that the product that I'm putting out is getting better and better, that my information is as accurate as I can possibly make it, and ensure that it has that level of credibility behind it. I think I'm to a point where trying to get nice things said about me by people that would ostensibly or could be viewed as my competition is something that I really don't want to waste my time on anymore. And what's funny is that I respect the work that guys like Eddie and George and the Scoop guys have done. They built a monster in terms of just what this market, just what's available in this market and the content that they put out. I couldn't have any more respect for the work that they do and what they built. And so from that standpoint, I'm disappointed. There's that kind of reaction. Like I understand if you want to come at me and if you're not my biggest fan, I get that. But again, it's just I think it's just a question for me, just a situation for me where I just keep my head down and keep doing my thing and let the chips fall.
And I think that is that's awesome, because man, I can't tell you how tough of a job it would be to have to. I mean, because everybody wants to be the first one to report on everything. It's like everybody has sources. Like I had a guy who he follows me on TikTok, and he said, "Hey, I just letting you know Arbuckle is in Norman today." He goes, "I've got really good sources," and I said, but I'm not a reporter, so like I'm not going to get on Twitter and put that out. But like if I was in your position, I'd probably be like, okay, tell me what your sources are, and you have to back it up, because it's a tough business, because everybody wants to be the first, and then if you're the first, then you're going to get backlash for, well, he's not reporting the truth, and it's just there's so many things out there. So let me be the first to tell you that I feel for, because you probably are I'm very competitive, and also too, like people were bad mouthing me. I try to keep my mouth shut. Now on Twitter, there are some times that I actually Sooner Scoop guys. There was a guy saying something to George Stoya the other day, saying, "I hate it when you put that out there. Like if you want to see this, you need to buy a subscription." I go, "How do you think they make money?" And he goes, "Well, it doesn't mean I have to like it." I go, "Well, it's the stupid comment." And so it's like I look at stuff like that, and I think, man, if I was in this business, they'd probably kick my ass out pretty quick. But that said, I think it's good that you stand behind your sources. I mean, that's really all you can do in this business. I think so. It's just and are there situations where you're wrong? Absolutely, but George Stoya's deal about you throw darts against the board and some of them stick. Like, I don't know, man. Like you said, I respect those guys. They do good work. I listen to their stuff and I take it as a gospel. But that said, there are times that I'm just like, maybe some of the stuff I can let it go. But Steve, what else you got, buddy?
Well, just a quick story here for all of us. Speaking of sources, I was listening to a thing today, and Mike Malarkey, who used to be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, came out and said this week that he called the night before he was going to get fired. He knew he was getting fired. He called Ian Rappaport, who's an NFL insider, and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm getting an extension. I want you to be first and put it out there." So Ian Rappaport put it out there, and then the next day he got fired. And Mike Malarkey was like, "Yeah, I just did that so I could F with the owner and the GM." So I guess not all sources can be trusted, and Matt knows that better than Jeremy and I. But like Jeremy said, Matt, we really appreciate you taking the high road there, because that's not the easy way to go. And something that I think is important in this season too is, like, as Sooners, we got to stick together, and there's no reason. We all want the same thing. We all want BV to hire the best person. We all want that. But to go back to just a little more information, Matt, maybe you have more on this. You talked about kind of tier 1, tier 2, maybe, and we all heard Mullen's name. We all have heard people talk about Kolonicki and Billy Napier somewhat. I had heard thrown around a little bit myself. Do you think money was a reason and obviously Billy Napier was probably before he got the vote of confidence and all that, but do you think money was a deciding factor there? Or do you think it was more just fit that led to Ben Arbuckle?
I can't say for sure, just to be honest. I think it's
like I said, this is more of an opinion-based thing here.
Yeah, for sure. So just based on what I know, OU was willing to pay salary-wise for an offensive coordinator. I don't know that it was so much a money decision. Again, I'm not in these guys' heads, right? So this is more just an opinion from my part. But I think they all had different factors as to why other candidates didn't work out. For one, Billy Napier saved his job at Florida. He's not getting fired anymore. That was a long shot. That was a long shot to start with. I think that's pretty clear. Kolonicki, again, just speculation on my part, but I would think he's probably more interested in a head coaching job, more so than a lateral move to a different school. What he was making at Penn State isn't really what OU was willing to pay. There wasn't really that big of a gap there. And again, I don't know, I don't have any inside intel on his preferences or what he wanted, but I could definitely just see from a fit standpoint where that might not have worked out or been something that he really seriously considered ever. And then when you look at Ben Arbuckle, I think it just works from a number of different standpoints. I know he had expressed interest in the job through his representatives, even from the very beginning of this process. And so then when you look at his what you can pay him or what you can get him for, quote unquote, from a salary perspective, I think it really fits really well with what OU wants to pay, and it gives them an opportunity to look at what they were willing to pay and give him accelerators within his contract period, and not be pushing them up into a level where they might be a little bit less comfortable with the total. So Yeah, I think it all worked out. There were definitely a lot of factors at play for all these candidates, and even Arbuckle included. But I think at the end of the day, it just worked. There were so many ways that worked for Arbuckle that it was really hard to deny. I think at certain points for both parties.
And what about go along with Arbuckle? Something I brought up on our previous pod was I kind of felt like from what I had heard that if it was Craddock, then it wasn't going to be Beatonbow. He wanted to bring his own offensive line coach. I thought if Arbuckle stayed, then Beatonbow would stay. So just kind of like any insight on that, and maybe the Michael Fasusi decision, and maybe how any of that ties all together.
Yeah. So as far as Bill Beatonbow is concerned, my expectation is that he'll stay at OU. I don't think he'd go any. I think he would retire before he left OU for a different school at this point, just based on what I know. And again, I don't necessarily know everything about his plans and his preferences and what those conversations are like, but that's my expectation. And then I'm also expecting Emmett Jones to stick around unless he ends up getting a head coaching job or something along those lines that would interest him. So we'll have to see how it plays out. I don't think there's been any kind of plans or communications between Arbuckle and anybody on the East. None of that's going on. That's for later down the road. They'll figure all that out. But just based on what I understand, Beatonbow specifically, I think he'll stick around, and I think that ties in directly with Michael Fasusi's decision. So, as you know, Fasusi went to Texas this last weekend. He's scheduled for a visit to Texas A&M this weekend or this next weekend, and just talking to people in the aftermath of the Texas visit, and even preceding it, obviously could change if Texas A&M comes in and changes the equation in some way, shape, or form that we can't anticipate. I could see that being, problematic for OU potentially. But I think when you look at, if you're just playing the odds and looking at what's the most likely outcome here, I would say that as long as Bill Beatonbow is at OU, so will Fasusi be. And that's really that's really where it stops and starts, I think, for Fasusi, just based on everything that I know and conversations that I've had.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that was going to kind of, Steve, help me out on that one. So I was going to see. I'm going to get a little more information out of you. So Fasusi, I heard, and you hear crap on Twitter that he left early from the Texas game, and I'm like, know how much truth is in that. Might be OU people trying to spread it, but that's it. I wasn't too worried. Like the whole situation with the problem I had with BV saying that if you're taking visits, then you're not committed. Every coach feels that way. You probably don't have to bring that up, more or less, but it may say it behind closed doors. It's just like if I'm engaged to somebody, then I don't anticipate them going and still dating. So, that's basically what commitments are to me. And so there are a lot of things that BV does that is Dabo Swinney driven. And that's one of them. I'm just like, I understand why he does it, but other schools can use that against you. And they do because of him being so public with it. So, but I wasn't worried. Like people made it sound like he was gone and we were done recruiting him. I'm like, we're still recruiting the dude. Like, we're not going to say, well, crap, he went somewhere else. So I just bothered the hell out of me listening to people say, well, we're losing him. I'm like, do you really think they're just not going to recruit him anymore? Like,
that was never going to happen. Like that was never the case. People can quibble with the details of how that policy gets executed and how they talk about it publicly. I think it's been a net positive for Brent Venables and OU, because the way that I look at it is decommitments are bad PR in a lot of ways. They can kill your momentum from a perception standpoint, and that's a real thing to me. That's a real thing. Whenever you have people's publicly saying, I don't want to go to your school anymore, then it's problematic as far as your recruiting momentum on the trail. And so if you can avoid those situations, it's great. to me, that's all the better. I don't think there's anybody that OU could have gotten that they didn't get because they implemented that policy. I think it's probably actually in reverse. If anything else, like, yeah, I can't know for sure, but I think it's definitely hurt them a whole lot more than, or it's helped them a whole lot more than it's hurt them over the last 3 years.
Yeah. I've got just two quick things here, Matt, and we don't want to keep you just too long here. But speaking of decommitments, have you heard anything on? Jeremy and I are both originally from Muskogee, so we've got a little bit of interest here in the Ficklin situation at quarterback. Have you heard anything more on that? And, as far as Kevin Sperry was concerned, I kind of felt like Kevin Sperry was gone as soon as Jeff Lebby was. I just felt like this was kind of a long, drawn-out process. But any additional insight to the quarterback situation here in 2025?
Yeah, so I think Josh McCuistion over at On3 had reported that last week OU was in touch with Ficklin the day before the Sperry commitments, essentially saying that they were not going to continue pursuing him. And then obviously the Sperry decommitment happened, and OU was suddenly in a position where they were in the market for a 2025 QB. And from what I understand, those conversations have restarted to the point where I think there's a visit in the works for sometime in the next few days, or sometime in the next few days here before signing day. So we'll see how it goes. That's all I really know at this point, is that those conversations have heated up. Would it surprise me if OU offers him here before the weekend? It would not surprise me at all. I don't know if Ficklin will flip at that point or not. I think a lot of that depends on these conversations that are happening right now. It's a very fluid situation, as OU talks to him and tries to restart that process with him. But I think there's a decent chance, if you're going to say that, especially considering the circumstances where OU essentially told him they were done recruiting him a week ago, the fact that they've got any shot at all. Going into
to go back to
day,
Jeremy's dating analogy, that'd be like saying, you know what? No, I'm going to date somebody else, and the next person dumps you. Like, you know what, baby? I'm sorry, you were good looking enough for me.
Yeah, but and this is and maybe in today's day and age, you say, okay, we'll write you a little bit bigger check than we would have. It's just again a speculation on my part, but that's one way. I don't know, but I know there's Ficklin's game is one that I think works well within the Arbuckle scheme. I'll say that. So it would be an interesting fit from that perspective. And anytime you can make it work with an Oklahoma kid who's got the skill set and the talent, then even better. So we'll see how it goes.
And that's my opinion. Is like, it feels like Ficklin's just waiting for them to offer him. Like. And this is a fan's perspective. Like, it just seems like if OU offered him, he'd be like, "That's where I want to go." And I don't know this, but I just can get an idea that like he's got a decision to make, because you've got Jaden O'Neal sitting there, the 2026, who honestly the time's running out. But if he wanted to, he could reclassify to 2025. I don't think he'll do it because it'd be a time crunch. But that said, he's got to look at, and I think that's what Kevin Sperry saw too, is Kevin Sperry's like, I got to play really dang good because I've got this starter coming in 2026. Because I think Jaden O'Neal is the future of the quarterback for OU. And that's one reason I thought the transfer quarterback made the most sense, because Jackson played unbelievable against Alabama. But I just don't feel like – I think everybody needs like kind of a change of scenery. So and that's my opinion. So, but
no, I don't disagree with that, at all. And I think if this year has taught us anything, is that it's really, you really don't know what's going to happen at the end of the day. You can look at a kid with all the talent in the world coming out of high school, and try and project his college career, but you just don't know how that's going to turn out based on a number of different factors. I mean, I was talking about this with our Discord subscribers the other day, and I can't help but think whenever you look at Jackson Arnold's year and how he's just how things have gone, I can't help but think that we just have not. We've been robbed of seeing his true ceiling and what he's really capable of because, between the wide receiver injuries and the offensive line shuffling and those injuries that they struggled with during the year, and then the Seth Luttrell fiasco and everything else. I mean, all those factors coming together in a perfect storm of just tragedy when it comes to an offensive philosophy and
you mean
execution.
Nobody's prepared to lose their top 6 receivers, Matt?
I just wonder. You can't help but wonder what might have been, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you get to a certain point, and OU knows this, I think. But I think when things go as badly as they have at OU this year, for Jackson Arnold specifically, it's hard. I think it's really hard for him to try and remake himself in a year and come back, right, and fulfill his full potential at that same place where things went so terribly. You're not really it's not a conducive environment. It's not an ideal environment, I think, in a lot of ways. And so, in that, just for that reason alone, I think you'll see him transfer and go somewhere else. Would not be surprised. So, and this is what I told people the other day. I think you could see Jackson Arnold end up being a below average QB in college, or he could be a Heisman winner. We don't know yet. It could be anywhere in between those 2 points. But whatever that ends up being, I don't think it's going to be at OU. And I say that unfortunately because, I think he showed a lot of character against Alabama, especially after the way that Missouri game ended. I mean, he could have folded in on himself and just laid it all down. And not only did he not do that from a mental perspective, but I think going into that game, he knew that he wasn't going to throw it 30 times and, light up the scoreboard for 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. He wasn't going to be the star of the show, so to speak. Mm-hmm. They were going to run. They were going to be run heavy, and that's, to me, that was the best thing for him. It really was, because it put the whole team, it put him in the best position to succeed, which is the whole idea, right? But I think this took a lot for him to get past that ending in Missouri and then go out there and execute. I mean, he was flawless in the RPO and zone read game throughout the whole thing. That was a big reason why they were successful as successful as they were in those run concepts, just because he was constantly making the right decision.
And I think it was simplified for him. I think that was probably the biggest thing with Seth. I just think it was. I made the statement. I think we were trying to move football calculus with Seth Luttrell, and sometimes we have a hard time with 2 + 2 or 3 times 8.
Yeah.
And I do think that really helped. I personally blame all of the Jackson Arnold issues of Art Briles coming on the field. Where would this offense be if Briles doesn't come on the field and we essentially and Lebby kind of has to leave? Like, Jackson Arnold was recruited to play for Jeff Lebby. He never really started a game where Jeff Lebby was going to call plays. Jeff Lebby says he's the best high school prospect he's ever seen. And would I be shocked if he's a Mississippi State Bulldog next year? No, I wouldn't. And I know they've got a freshman quarterback who's done a pretty good job. But I'm with you, Matt. I think Jackson is gone, but let's hope he can get another win down in the Bayou this weekend.
All right, Matt, we're not going to
would be nice.
We won't keep you much longer. So I appreciate you coming on, dude. It means a lot to us. Me and Steve have had fun with this, and the reception we've got on has been great. And when you started getting some of the backlash on Saturday, I told Steve, I said, we got to get him on quick because, just so you could have a voice. And when you get, I know you're looking at starting your own podcast. So when it gets closer and you start finalizing that, jump on here. And I'll end with this. I'm curious to see if Jackson Arnold has another great game against LSU. Where in the hell? My brother said this last week. He goes, what do we do with Jackson Arnold? If he's going to play like that and just play winning football, like, what do you do with a 5-star quarterback? Do you tell a 5-star quarterback, like, thank you, but you're gone? Or has the damage already been done? And, I mean, Jackson's doing everything he's supposed to. He's acting, he is a team player. He was a captain against Alabama. So It's like, obviously, the teammates love him. But if he goes out there and plays another game like he did against Alabama against LSU, then we're like, holy crap. And does Mateer want to come in and compete for a starting job? So it
all burning
questions, Jeremy, is money. It's money. Jackson's making more money, whether it's here or somewhere else, as long as he plays well. So he's got millions of reasons why he's going to try to play well this weekend.
Yeah,
Matt, thanks again for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
Hey, Matt, signing off, why don't you give us your tags on Twitter just so everybody knows it?
You can find me. My personal account is cap_405. You can also find the Crimson Captain account at crimson_cap. And the website is crimsoncaptain.com.
Matt, once again, dude, I appreciate you. You're awesome. And until next time, Boomer Sooner.
Boomer.